There comes a time for all of us to go, but no one is irreplaceable and life goes on without us. So what happens when the pillars of society take their leave? Others have to step up and take their place. How do things change with that shift in personalities? What effect does it have on society as a whole? I invite you on this journey with me through the 4th episode of Arcane to see that together. Shall we? And what's pretty cool about this episode is that it starts with something that I love. I love that this episode begins with Heimerdinger lighting a new match, and with the sun rising, signifying the dawn of a new day. It fits the message perfectly for today's theme. Heimerdinger greets Jace as he assesses the 200 years of existence for the city of Piltover. At the same time, he introduces Jace to his old friend's statue, and gets even deeper into today's point. Heimerdinger sees Jace as his successor, and as such, he tries to infuse the young man with his wisdom. The professor wants to prepare the student for the path of sacrificing one's ambition for the good of one's people, but even more precisely, to pass on the knowledge and wisdom that one received from his elders to his successors. Certainly a contrast to the way that Jace was handling things until now, being consumed by his ambitions. But the seeds are planted in Jace's mind now, and he will carry them and let them grow through this episode. This passing of the torch is allowed by Heimerdinger, with him allowing Jace to do the speech for Progress Day, as he's always done himself. Jace will not be the only character embodying today's theme. Let's move on to Caitlin. Caitlin explored another idea of succession, which is when someone derives from the path that was laid out in front of them and search for their own way. Caitlin decides to discover the world by herself by enrolling into the police, knowing that the privileged life that was prepared for her would not allow her to explore life as she saw fit. We will see, however, if she will be able to adapt and endure a more brutal world than her upbringing prepared her to face. With that shift in fate, Caitlin forms resentment in her family, which is one aspect that a disagreement on succession can bring to the table. Not only that, in a later scene, we observe how the order of things can hold a strong grip to put you back on your initial way. Marcus scolding Caitlin about her involvement in the Jinx case is a reminder of that. Society will push hard for Caitlin to stay in her lane. Pun intended. We then have a scene describing us the shady trades that the Undercity seem to be doing, with a bit of resistance that they face in the firelights, but most importantly, we see Powder again, going by the name of Jinx now. We'll come back to Jinx a bit later because the successor aspect of a character is linked to another. So for now, let's move back to Jace. Do you remember when I said that Jace was Heimerdinger's choice for succession? There was one other very good potential candidate. Jace's own partner, Victor. However, we're clearly introduced in this scene to the difference in character that made Heimerdinger push towards Jace instead of Victor. Due to his illness, Victor lacks patience and refinement for his work to be put to use. This recklessness makes him push back the professor when the latter notes that the Hextech crystals should not be publicized for the moment. In contrast, Jace seems to understand his mentor's point of view and places himself in the middle of the two other men. Heimerdinger's seeds are growing in his head. And now it's time to be properly introduced to Vander and Vi's successors as the leader of the lane and his protege, Silco and Jinx. You can see from just a quick walk into the lanes that this new leadership changed things. There's more booze, more drugs, more music, more aggressiveness. When leaders change, so do the groups that they lead. This new ambience is a reflection of Silco and how different he is from Vander as a figurehead. But they do have similarities. They both have to teach their pupils, though even that they do in different ways. Silco piles up pressure on Jinx, more than Vander used to pile up on Vi. Another thing is that while Vander tried to overly protect the children, Silco relies on Jinx, which shows a sense of great trust that could arguably be missing in Vander's way, even though Jinx is still a pawn in Silco's operations. Jinx injecting shimmer in Silco's eyes is another great sign of trust. While Vander's affection for Vi was obvious, it's harder to determine what Silco's thoughts actually are about Jinx, but it definitely seems like there is some care behind those eyes. However, Jinx is an unstable mess, and it's hard to figure out whether Silco wants her to get better by giving her free time, or if he wants to keep her on the crazy leash. Whatever the goal is, Jinx's instability will be a problem in this episode. Talking about Succession, what does the next scene begin with? Because yes, Mel represents another side of Succession in a different domain, although comparison is hard to do since we do not know her mother yet. But Mel's objective is definitely to secure Jace's succession to Heimerdinger's head of the council position, and secure herself a place at his side. And for that she will use her charms, as well as teach the young man the politics of rising to power. Her grip on Jace is still not enough though, as the seeds of Heimerdinger's wisdom bloom within him during his Progress Day speech. He will not reveal the Hextech crystals to the world, despite Mel's advice, and will choose the way of restraint and caution. By doing that, he also creates a rift between his partner and himself, and their ambition and vision start to derive from each other. And this goes even further when he apologizes to the council for the terrorist attack and theft of Hextech technology that cost people's lives. But Mel has not given up on her golden boy yet, and bets on elevating his power and influence furthermore to give him a taste of what he could have should he stop restraining wisely. As such, Jace becomes a counselor, and the succession has begun. We already talked about Vander and Silco's divergence when it comes to leading and teaching their pupils, and the following scene could not make that any clearer. Here we have a very direct parallel with Vander's conversation with Vi about blowing up a building in episode 1, almost word for word. However, whereas Vander puts his greed and ambition aside to prioritize teaching the children about caution, Silco lets himself get absorbed by the crystal Hextech vision and the potential opportunity created by Jinx's recklessness. However, it is very important to notice that the last look he gives is not to the crystal, but to Jinx, with worry. I will definitely keep that in mind for the rest of the series. To end the discussion of Succession for the day, we finish on a tearing of relationship scene when it comes to Jace and Caitlyn, taking two different paths to see eye to eye on Caitlyn's fate. What a contrast, the poor boy who rose to power and the rich girl who wanted to get her hands dirty. Both of their pursuits lead them away from each other. This is beautifully illustrated by the fact that Caitlyn standing on her chair gives her the same height as Jace, for as long as they're good about each other. But as soon as the conflict arrives, that equality in height disappears as Kate gets off from the chair. As she goes to the prison, Caitlyn gets deeper and deeper out from her initial path, represented by the shift of colors in the prison, with bloody red and dark colors, but also by literally going deep underground to go find Vi. Will Vi be the solidifier of Caitlyn's change of ways? We got to see in this episode how deeply societies have been changed by the change of their leaders, and how it brought about a certain instability. We'll see what this instability leads to for the world's fate, but most importantly for the character's fate. Because I don't know about you, but I'm growing quite fond of them. But that will be it for today, and we'll see each other again for another episode another day. In the meantime, see you for another one.